Okay, folks. Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is James Pastor. I know quite a few of you. Thanks for coming again to another Visiting Artist webinar. It looks like we're leveling out here, Jaclyn. Maybe we'll get started.
Great.
Okay, folks. Thanks again for coming. I'm James Pastor, the program director here at Clay Art Center. We are proud to bring another virtual visiting artist lecture to everybody. If you're new to Clay Art Center, we are a nonprofit located in Port Chester, New York, just a little bit north of Manhattan, Westchester suburbs of the city. And we are very happy to have you guys here. And this is our mission statement here. And, you know, one thing that we love to talk about and take a lot of pride in is our ability to spread ceramic education. And one of our missions is free programming. So, you know, we are happy to bring these webinars to you free, and we are a community arts clay center where we offer residency programs, adult and youth education, and in-house artist resources for our local ceramic community. So thanks again. If you're not familiar with us, or if it's your first time here, thanks again. So today we have wonderful guests. We have Jaclyn Eckersley. If I got that right. Jaclyn is actually, we are co-workers. So Jaclyn is here on staff. She is our development assistant and has been here at Clay Art Center for almost a year. And we're very happy to have you, Jaclyn. So I'll turn it over to you and you can get started. And folks, we are gonna leave a Q&A to the end of the presentation. And then after the talk, I'll go over exactly how we'll do Q&A. So thanks again, Jaclyn, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, James. Let's see if I can share my screen correctly. Share. All right, does that look good?
Perfect.
Everyone, great. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today and welcome. I hope we'll have a fun about an hour traveling through the prehistoric Southwest. I feel very lucky to work at the Clay Art Center, and I'm so grateful that they asked me to give this talk because it is two of my favorite things. I love the American Southwest and I love pottery. And so this is a great way to merge and talk about both of those things. All right. Before we go ahead and get started, I wanted to just acknowledge what's going on in our nation and in the world, the present social environment. And I wrote this up and I'd just like to read it. As an archaeologist, I study the things people leave behind. Spurred by my love of ceramics, which began in 4th grade, I decided to focus my graduate study on prehistoric ceramics. Pottery reveals so much about past peoples. Ceramics tell us about identity, social connections, home size, community, feasts, trade, culture, and migration. It is fortunate that ceramics withstand the test of time and are one of the most ubiquitous artifacts because sometimes they are all that is left of a person's story. I continue to study the history of the people of the prehistoric Southwest through pottery and appreciate the realizations I've had about identity. My study of the past clarifies my need to self-examine how I am respecting and supporting the people and the realities that exist today. Today, people tell complete stories through their voices, actions, and their art. The current national and global anti-racist movement is a poignant reminder to listen and learn with gratitude to these complete stories. All right, thank you for letting me take the time to say that. Now we'll go ahead and get started with the talk. So we are going to actually start with a poll. James, if you could cue that up. Great, okay, so we're gonna start out just square one. What is archaeology? Go ahead and send in your votes. We've got 1, the study of the human past. 2, the study of the past, specifically what is buried in the ground. And 3, that's a good question, I don't know. Okay, and James, once we get enough answers, do you want to go ahead and just show the results?
Sure, we just got a couple more.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, interesting. So we've got 39% is the study of human past, 55% the study of past, specifically what is buried in the ground, and 7% good question, I don't know. Probably should have had some more of the good question, I don't know, because the right answer was the study of the human past. So actually, it's awesome that you're joining me for this talk, because it's one of my joys in life to clarify what archaeology is for people. So I will start with what archaeology is, and then we'll go into what it is not. So archaeology is the study of the human past. We are interested in cultural and social behavior, and it is at the intersection of social sciences, humanities, and natural sciences. So it's right in between the hard and soft sciences. One famous archaeologist that everyone should recognize is Indiana Jones. This is how he defines archaeology. Archaeology is the search for fact, not truth. If it's truth you're interested in, Dr. Tyree's philosophy class is right down the hall. So forget any ideas you've got about lost cities, exotic travel, and digging up the world. We do not follow maps to buried treasure, and X never ever marks the spot. 70% of all archaeology is done in the library. Awesome. And this quote, even though it's from Hollywood, is actually true. Archaeologists now adhere to the idea that excavation is destruction, and ideally we only undertake it when we have significant research goals. We can learn a lot about past peoples through what's already in museums, and by reading in the library. We'll go ahead to what archaeology is not. So archaeology is not treasure hunting. The goal is not to find the coolest thing that you can find and pocket it and put it on your mantle. We do find cool things, but some things that like aren't intrinsically cool are cool to us because they reveal a lot. Like, for example, in the Southwest, if you find Granary, which is where the prehistoric people stored their corn, and it's full of corn. It's just corn cobs. That's not super cool, but it actually is cool because that's like 1,000-year-old corn. And finally, so archaeology is not the study of everything buried in the earth. There's a lot buried in the earth that was prior to human beings. So unfortunately, that means we do not study dinosaurs. So if you were hoping to get a lecture about dinosaurs making pottery, this is not your lecture. All right, so moving on. So a little bit about where I studied. I got my bachelor's and master's in archaeology, which is a subset of anthropology, at Brigham Young University in Utah. I did a lot of my teaching work in Utah Valley. As a graduate student, I was a crew chief, so I led a crew of undergraduates in excavating a Fremont Indian village, which is about 1,000 years old. And here you can see in the background, you can see the Wasatch Range of the Rocky Mountains. This is in Utah Valley, so this is where I was doing my teaching. But my thesis research was here in Beef Basin, which is in southern Utah. And you can tell there's quite a dramatic difference in the landscapes. And before we continue, we've got one more poll. James, if you could cue that up.
Sure, headed your way.
All right, so I just want to get an idea of how familiar my audience is with the American Southwest. So have you been to the American Southwest? Yes, many times. Yes, a few times, or never. And it should say never, but of course I would like to.
Okay, a couple more people. Okay.
All right, great. Okay, so we've got 29% yes many times, 46% yes a few times, and never, but I really would like to, 25%. Awesome. And I hope everyone here that has visited the Southwest had really positive experience. It is absolutely breathtaking. All right, so just a quick, context of where Beef Basin is. So in southern Utah, in what is called the Four Corners region, and it is called the Four Corners because 4 states meet up in one place: Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. So you can visit the monument and technically stand in 4 states. Well, not stand, you'd have to kind of, I don't know, kneel down and get in 4 states at once. And then, okay, so it is also, Beef Basin is located within the original scope of the Bears Ears National Monument. That was a hot topic for a while. So the kind of tan color there was the original Bears Ears boundary that President Obama delineated. And then you can see what, the monument has been reduced to. Sorry about that. So now Beef Basin is not in the monument. But it is, it's a beautiful area. It's a land of sandstone formations, pinyon juniper forests, excellent preservation because it is a desert, and a high density of archaeological sites. And just to orient everyone, this is Southeast Utah. Up here is Moab. That's where Arches National Park is. We've got the Colorado River and Lake Powell. And then down here is the San Juan River. All right. And what is interesting about Beef Basin is that it is located in between 2 known archaeological cultures. So you've got the Fremont culture, this blue here, and then you've got the Ancestral Puebloan culture, which is this yellow. And Beef Basin is situated right in the middle, and there has been a dearth of archaeological research in that area, and so archaeologists aren't sure who was living there and when they lived there. As part of my graduate study, I chose ceramics to help me answer, or start to answer, these big questions of when was it occupied, who was it occupied by, who did they have social ties to, etc. And I did want to talk about these terms. So if we go back, you can see there's the Fremont culture and then the Ancestral Puebloan culture. Some people may have heard the term Anasazi to describe the Ancestral Puebloans, and Anasazi is actually a Navajo word, which roughly means ancient others or ancient enemies. So today we use the term Ancestral Puebloans, which is a term that refers to the modern Pueblo peoples, some of whom live in the Pueblos on the Hopi Mesas of Arizona and the Pueblos along the Rio Grande in New Mexico. And so the Ancestral Puebloan people that lived in Beef Basin were the ancestors of the modern Pueblo people today. So we do not use a Navajo word to describe them. We use Ancestral Puebloan, and there's also Pueblo words that are very hard to pronounce that are also used. Okay, so, and I just want to show you a picture of a modern Pueblo. This is Taos Pueblo in New Mexico. And many of the Pueblos welcome visitors. Some of the Pueblo people live in these Pueblos or have like a second home here. And then they live most of the time outside of the Pueblos. But they are still a spot for ritual and ceremonial events. And anyone who's interested in any of the artists, some of the Pueblos offer workshops where you can go and learn how to make ceramics in their traditional style using traditional methods. So you have a yucca brush, you're using organic paints, you're going out and collecting the clay. I know a few of the people in the ceramics program went and did that. And I would love to do that sometime. Okay, so those are the modern Pueblo people. And this, before we get into the pottery of the Ancestral Puebloans, I thought it was important that we introduce you to who the Ancestral Puebloan people were. So this is just a brief timeline. The beginning of the Pueblo culture began around 500 BC, and it grew out of the preceding archaic culture, which was characterized by people hunting and gathering and moving around. The beginning of the Pueblo culture is characterized by sedentism, agriculture, population growth, and new social organization. Ancestral Puebloan people hunted with bows and arrows rather than the large atlatls or spears of the archaic people. And the Ancestral Puebloans primarily relied on maize or corn agriculture. They also hunted and did gather wild plants, and they also kept turkeys, who also survived on the corn that they grew. And around AD 200 AD, these people who had previously only made baskets began to make pottery. The hallmark architecture of these people, as you can see here, are masonry room blocks. It's one depiction where people lived and stored food. Another characteristic architecture that you'll see if you go out into the Southwest is a granary. Granaries were used to store grain and to keep it safe. I don't know if you guys can hear my baby. That's Eloise in the background, my live audience. Granaries, if you go into the canyons and the sandstone cliffs of the Southwest in remote areas, you look hard, you can find these in some of the most difficult to reach places. This one is missing its door, but if we were back 1,000 years ago, it would have a door, it would be full of grain, and it was to keep the corn protected from animals and from other people who you did not want to share your corn with. And most of the people in earlier Pueblo times did live in family settlements. It wasn't until later that people began to aggregate and live in larger communities. Another piece of architecture that's interesting are the Kivas. The Kivas are, they're below ground circular buildings that, if you have the smaller Kivas were used for individual household events, as well as ritual events, ritual significance. Then as you go later into the present, so around AD 1100, you get, or AD 900 through 1100, you get these large great kivas that are public architecture that were specifically for ritual and economic events and very significant. And the place where you'll find these great kivas, many of these great kivas are in Chaco Canyon. You are looking at, in this picture, a picture of Pueblo Bonito, which is a Chacoan great house. It is a multi-storied complex with about 600 to 800 rooms and over 30 kivas. So AD 900 marks the rise of Chaco Canyon, which is located in northwestern New Mexico. And Chaco Canyon has these huge great houses that took a lot of organized labor to build. It also has roads that extend out of Chaco Canyon to outlier sites hundreds of miles away. And because the architecture is so large and grandiose, some would say. Archaeologists, some interpret Chaco Canyon as indicating that there is social stratification in the ancestral Puebloan culture at this time. And this would have been the only time that there has ever been like formal political social stratification in Pueblo culture. Sorry. So 900 AD, we've got the rise of Chaco, and then by 1140 AD, the Chaco system collapses. People are no longer building these great houses. People are no longer living in these great houses. And archaeologists attribute the collapse to a period of severe drought. And people moved out of Chaco Canyon, and they moved east, west, and north. And so I was wondering if Beef Basin was one of the places that these people who moved out of Chaco Canyon moved to. We do know one of the places where these people moved, and they moved out of Chaco Canyon into Mesa Verde, which is north. And they, instead of living in these great houses, they lived in these, this is Cliff Palace, these large pueblos situated in defensible locations. So this is under a big rock outcropping. And so you've got people fleeing the Chaco area because of a drought. You've got them aggregating together in defensible locations. And then there is evidence of social unrest and warfare. And after people aggregate in these defensible locations, by the mid 1280s, they're all uninhabited. So there's a huge population movement. And one of the stories that people like to tell is the ancestral Puebloans moved from Chaco to Mesa Verde, and then they moved from Mesa Verde in the late 13th century, and no one knows where they went. But we do know where they went. The modern Pueblo people exist today, and these are their ancestors. What the bigger and more exciting questions are: what caused this large social change, this large social upheaval, and what caused these people to vote with their feet and move? So I wanted to see how Beef Basin fit into this narrative. So again, who lived there, why they lived there, and how the people were connected to the rest of the people in the Southwest. And my primary tool was ceramics. And a lot of my work was going out and studying ceramic sherds, which is not me mispronouncing the word shard. They're called ceramic sherds. I've had a lot of people correct me on that. But so here we have an example of pieces of pottery or ceramic sherds. And later, after this, if you want to go onto YouTube, you can watch this great program that was put together by Utah State University in conjunction with the Dixie National Forest Heritage Program. And you can watch this kind of corny video about Sherdy, the storyteller. And Sherdy over here is a piece of a pot who gets picked up by a girl, and he comes to life and tells her his story. So there you go. You've learned something. Pieces of pottery are called sherds, and archaeology is not about dinosaurs. So I hope you guys at least take that away from today. Okay, so here I am doing my field work. So you go out into Beef Basin, and you see these structures that people have not, these sites that have not been recorded, and all scattered all around these structures are bits of pottery and bits of, they're called lithics. So when you like make an arrowhead and you chip away at it, they scatter all over the ground. And I did not have the funding or really the need to do any excavation. So all of my research was based on ceramics that were just lying on the surface. Here's another, an example. This is a kiva that we found in Beef Basin. definitely not in as good of condition as those in the national parks, as well as some of those walls. And up on this mesita, you can see there are some structures. And I guess this is a good time to do a little plug. As you can see, like, nothing is protecting these resources besides the fact that they are pretty remote. And so if you do go visit, please try not to love them to death. Don't walk on them. If you see a cool piece of pottery, you can pick it up, but put it back where you found it. And definitely don't take it. Because like Shirley teaches us, it's got a story to tell. And if everyone who goes to the sites takes a piece of the pottery, then there's no artifacts left. Okay. So here are some of the ceramics that I collected from the surface of these sites. You can see some of the hallmark designs of the Northern San Juan or Ancestral Puebloan pottery. You've got this corrugated type, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and you've got this black on white type. And I will show you some whole vessels, but I wanted to show you that as an archaeologist, I was not dealing with whole vessels. You know, it adds one more layer of complexity to doing this research. So here you have a beautiful whole vessel. So 4 things that ceramics can tell us that I'm going to talk about are time frames. So when were these sites occupied? Culture, who occupied them? Who are they related to? Activities that were undertaken, and the values of the people that made the pots. All right, so here we get into really pretty pictures of whole vessels. And so one cool thing about the American Southwest is that we've got one of the most precise ceramic chronologies in the world, and that is in part due to the amazing preservation that the desert offers. So in the early days of archaeology, vessels were found and alongside other artifacts, including timbers that were used to build the architecture. And so using the timbers, you cut off a piece and you can date the site using the tree rings. And then you can associate the age of the wood with the pottery that's found in that context. And after, 100 years of doing this, we've come up with this amazing ceramic chronology so that when we go to a site, we no longer have to do the tree ring counting. We can just look at the pottery and see, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of this here. I think it dates to this time. So we've got some examples here. We've got the Chapin black on white bowls, and these are early whiteware. And then you come over here, you've got the Mancos. And then even later, you've got the Mesa Verde black on white. Right, and here's some more pictures. So not only do the designs tell you what type and what time period the pottery came from, the vessel shape, the object shape also tells you. Specifically, the mugs are only found later. And the mugs are really fascinating. I'm going to branch off from time to connections. In that, so the mugs are only found later in the late 13th century. And many mugs have had traces of cacao on them, which indicates that these people had connections with people in Mesoamerica, which is where the cacao came from. So it shows that these people were, when you're out there, you feel pretty isolated, but these people were not isolated. They had broad sweeping connections. Okay, and here are some pictures. So you got to see some beautiful whole vessels. And then this is what I was working with. And so you look for different design elements that indicate how old the pottery is. These are all late. These are all Mesa Verde black on white, and you can tell by these are rim shirts, so they come from the rim of the bowl. And the thick and thin banding lines are one trait indicative of the pottery's age, as well as this design that it almost looks like the design is the white painted on black because the black is so thick. And so that is one of the characteristics. Okay, so there are two main types of pottery that the Ancestral Puebloans made. You have your whiteware and you have your grayware. And as you can see, the whiteware was definitely a little more pleasing to the eye. And whiteware was used for making bowls, so serving bowls where you could see the design, or jars that were sitting out so you could see the beautiful design, or dippers for serving and mugs for drinking. Again, here we see the bowls. We do not see any cooking jars. The cooking jars were made of a different stuff. They were not whiteware, they were grayware. And the grayware pots were made and the whiteware were made by starting with a base, and then these people didn't have the wheel. They put down a coil and then pinched it out and then built their vessel. And the grayware, they did not completely obliterate the coils. You can see the whiteware, everything is smooth. It was built by coils, and then a lot of labor, a lot of time was taken smoothing out all the coils. The grayware, you can still see the coils, and then you can see what's called corrugation, which is where they went through and pressed with a tool or their finger to create this bumpy pattern on the vessel. And while we aren't sure why, we do hypothesize that it's quicker to do that than to obliterate all the coils, and it distributes the heat better and makes your jar stronger. And what's really cool about these coils is that sometimes you can see the fingerprints of these people, which really helps you connect with them and helps you realize that, you know, the important thing about archaeology isn't this cool pot, it's learning about the people that made this pot. And I especially like pottery because traditionally it is the women that make the pottery. And for a while, the discipline didn't really talk about like the women's work. But pottery is just one of those examples of what women did in the society. And there's also really cool evidence of this craft being taught to their daughters. Let's go ahead and skip to this part. So normally you see these beautiful pieces, but in the archaeological record you do find vessels that are made by someone who's not quite as skilled as you know, the trademark designs. You also find miniature vessels, and one hypothesis is that these miniatures were made by the children, or that they were, you know, that's kind of the fallback, is that they were of ritual significance. But another hypothesis is that the children made them. And so you've got this beautiful pot to the right, and then you've got someone trying real hard to make the design on the left. And within Beef Basin, we actually found some of those sherds. They were sherds that didn't quite have the elegant design, and they were poorly fired. And so this teaches us that in Beef Basin, there were people that were learning the craft, and that people were there long enough to teach the craft to people, younger generations. And it also teaches us that they were making pottery, that they didn't bring in their pottery from somewhere else. This was locally produced. All right, going back. Okay, another really cool thing about this grayware is that you can tell by the angle of the rim when it was made. So here you can see it, the earlier vessel has a wall that goes straight up and down, and the later vessel has a rim that kind of fans out like this. It's called rim aversion, and I spent a lot of time measuring rim sherds and the aversion of them to get a good handle on the dates that Beef Basin was occupied. And then I used this mean ceramic dating, this mathy magic, to kind of look at the frequency of the ceramic types that I found on the site. Math woo, and then you get a date associated with each of the sites based on the frequency of each type of ceramic found there. And so we've got Beef Basin being occupied around the time that Chaco had completely declined. And so that indicates that perhaps these were people that left the Chaco system and decided to start in a new place where there weren't any big great houses. Another thing that we can learn from ceramics is like the values of the people. We don't know the importance of this keyhole shape, but it does show up in this mug, and it also shows up. Keyholes are a classic shape of the doors of the ancestral Puebloan buildings. And so it kind of makes you wonder, what does this shape mean? Why was it important to them? Another thing that was really cool that I found in Beef Basin was that the pottery wasn't just used to make vessels. We've got pottery that was used to make figurines, which is actually very rare for the ancestral Puebloans during this time. Figurines either date to much later or much earlier than to when these sites dated to. And so we don't really have an answer as to why figurines were found in Beef Basin. One hypothesis is that because it is located so close to the Fremont cultural region, and the Fremont did make a lot of figurines, that perhaps Beef Basin was this borderland that was getting influences from both the north and the south. And even perhaps that maybe these ancestral Puebloan people were open to these new ideas because their old ideas didn't serve them well, and they left them behind. All right, go ahead, and this will probably be one of the last things that I talk about. This is another sherd that we found in Beef Basin. Most of the sherds that we found have geometric patterns, and that has been attributed to kind of coming from the designs that their ancestors were able to make on baskets, as well as, you know, the human form being taboo, something that you couldn't put on ceramics. But we did find this sherd, and as you can see, it's got a head and these little circles on either side of its head and a little arm. And after doing some further research, I found some other vessels that had a similar design, the little things on the side of the head. All these pieces are not from Beef Basin, though. They're from further east, and they're from much earlier or much later than that piece. And then if you do a little bit of ethnographic research, you see that the Hopi women for ceremonial and ritual events put their hair in these squash flower buns, which really resemble the figures on these pots and in the sherd that we found in Beef Basin. And so that kind of helps us link the ancestral Puebloan people to the modern Pueblo people today. And it is really miraculous to see that this ideal, this value has lasted thousands of years. I mean, you think how old the United States is, 300, and you know, we're definitely not wearing our hair like the colonial women were wearing their hair today. All right, talked about that. And then we'll go to questions, but before we do, I just wanted to thank all the following people. And again, reiterate, please enjoy these resources and learn about the people who made them. But when you go, you know, no one's monitoring you. So really respect the people who left these things behind, respect the people who are related to them that are living today, and don't take anything and don't ruin it. Just enjoy enjoy the special feelings that you get when you go to these places. All right, and that's it. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jaclyn. That was really wonderful. And thank you everybody for coming. So thanks so much, Jaclyn. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.